The Idries Shah Foundation podcast. Practical psychology for today. Featuring the works of Idries Shah, narrated by David Ault. Welcome to the Idries Shah Foundation podcast. In this edition of the podcast, we will hear selections from Seeker After Truth by Idries Shah. This audio is made available by the Idries Shah Foundation. Scent and Reality. The Master Bahuddin was sitting one evening after dinner, surrounded by a large number of newcomers, old and young, all eager to learn. A silence fell, and the Master asked for a question. Someone said, "What is the greatest difficulty in the learning and the teaching of the way?" The Master answered, "People go by superficialities. They are attracted by preaching, by rumour and report, and by that which excites them, like bees to the scent of flowers." The man asked, "But how else are people to approach wisdom, or bees flowers?" The Master answered, "The human approaches wisdom through report and noise, preaching and reading and excitement. After he has approached it, however, he stays near it to demand more of the same, not whatever it can give, which is what it is there for. Bees approach flowers by scent, but they do not, once arrived at the proximity of the bloom, demand merely more and more scent. They adjust to the nectar which they have to collect. This is the equivalent of the reality of wisdom, of which the report and imaginings are, as it were, the scent. So the number of real bees among humanity is very small, whereas almost all bees are bees, in being able to collect nectar. Almost all beings are not yet human beings, in the sense of being attuned to perceive what they were created for." Then the Master said, "Let those who came here to Casa al-Arifin because of reading stand up." Many stood. "Let those," he continued, "who came to us because of hearing about us also stand up." Many more stood. "Those who are still seated," he continued, "are those who came because they perceived our presence and authenticity in another subtle manner. Those who are standing, old and young, include many who only demand more and more of their feelings to be stirred, who desire excitement or calm. Before they can learn what they cannot experience elsewhere, they must require knowledge and not services of attraction." He then said, "There are those who are attracted to a teacher because of his repute, and who accordingly travel to see him, to seek even more of the same sensation. When he dies, they visit his grave, again for a similar reason. Unless their aspirations are transformed, as if by alchemy, they will not find truth. And," he said, "there are those who visit a teacher not because they have heard of him as a great living mentor, not because they wish to see his tomb, but because they recognize his inmost reality. One day everyone will possess this faculty." Now Bahuddin the designer said, "But in the meantime, the work which will be done eventually through the generations has to be performed in one and the same individual. To become a Moses, you will have to transcend your Pharaoh. The man who is attracted by repute must become, as it were, another man. He must become a man who stays in proximity to wisdom because he has sensed its inmost reality. This is the purpose of this work before he can learn. Until he has learnt this, he is a mere dervish. A dervish desires, a Sufi perceives." The heretics. It is related that Imam alGhazali was invited one day to an assembly of jurists, whose chief said to him, "You are a learned man, as we are also from among the learned. Therefore humbler folk come to you to seek interpretations of the Sharia, the holy law. It has been reported to us that you have advised some of these people not to observe the fast during the month of Ramadan. You are also said to have stated that certain people should not make the pilgrimage to Mecca. Others have averred that you have reprimanded people for saying, 'There is no God but Allah.' Such mischievous words, if true, are proof to us of infidelity. Only your reputation has so far protected you from death for apostasy. The people have a right to be protected from such as you." Ghazali sighed and answered, "The holy law of Islam itself says that people who are not of a full understanding of the law and what it means are not culpable under that law, nor subject to its rules. These include children and imbeciles, but must also include those bereft of understanding. If a man does not perceive the inner reality of fasting, or goes on a pilgrimage only to suffer, or says the confession of faith and has no faith, he is bereft of understanding, and should not be encouraged to continue, but must be put on the road to understanding. The people, in your words, have the right to be protected from such as you, who would reward them for no merit and persecute them for no crime. If a man cannot walk by reason of having a lame leg, do you tell him to walk, or do you give him a crutch or heal his affliction? It is due to his foretelling of the appearance of such as you that the Prophet has said, 'Islam came as a stranger, and it will depart as a stranger.' Understanding of the meaning of things is beyond your intention, your training, and your capacity. That is why there is nothing left to you but to threaten people with death for apostasy. And yet it is not I who am the apostate, but you." Neighbor. Imam Abu Hanifah was one of the great Sufis, and is recognized as the founder of the Hanifite school of law. He was so independent that he would never go to court, although the Caliph tried everything to attract the interest of the most illustrious sage of the time. Abu Hanifah had a neighbor, a cobbler who was also a considerable drunkard. Every night the wild ravings of the alcoholic disturbed his meditations, but the Imam did not complain. One night there was no sound from the cobbler's room, and the Imam, going to inquire about his welfare, found that the imperial police had arrested him. He immediately went to the palace to see the Caliph Mansur. At the sight of the Imam, the guards sprang to attention, the officers and courtiers bowed, and the emirs rose from their places. The Caliph went to the door of the throne room to receive Abu Hanifah, and brought him to the throne itself, and seated him upon it. "May I know the reason for the honor of this visit?" the Caliph asked. "The cobbler from next door has been arrested, and I come to ask for his release," said the Imam. "But," said the captain of the guard, "this man is a disorderly drunkard." "This man," said the Imam, "is without friends and is my neighbor." "Illustrious Imam," said the Caliph, "your nobility of spirit must receive its true recognition. You intercede for one prisoner. Our generosity matches yours. I hereby release every single prisoner in the empire of Islam." Teaching. The Sufi sage Sa'di of Shiraz was on his way to Baghdad, when the caravan which he was with was attacked by bandits. When the robbers asked him for his possessions, Sa'di handed their chief a pile of books and some gold coins. I give these to you as a gift, so do not regard them as stolen, he said, but make good use of them. The robbers sneered, and their chief said, I suppose you're trying to teach us goodness. No, said Sadi, I do not think that I can teach you anything. So I am hoping that I can give you these items, books and money, freely, and that in return you will do something for me with them. And what is that? Find a wise man, give him these books, and pay his upkeep. Let him at least teach your children about the evils of theft, so that they may not repeat your mistakes. The Four Types. It is related that Bahuddin Naqshband was asked about the various kinds of people pursuing higher knowledge. He said, I shall tell you by means of an allegory, not to be taken as literally true, but reflecting the condition of the human being. Then he told this story. It is recorded in the traditions of the lovers of truth that when the souls were created before the bodies, they were asked what they wanted as a means of travelling in this world. There were 4 parties among them. The first desired to travel on foot as the safest method. The second desired horses, for this would mean less work for them. The third wished to travel on the wind to overcome limitations. The fourth chose light, by which they could understand as well as move. These 4 groups still exist, and all people still abide by one of these characteristics. Those who are the pedestrians are limited in space and speed. They are the imitators. The horsemen are those who rely on books, and are thus driven by the horse of the author's beliefs. The third category are blown all over the place as if by the wind, and the fourth are the Sufis. In terms of studies, the first group attach themselves to lower and exciting cults, the second to zealously propagated ideas, the third to systems of their own choosing or devising, taking something here and something else there. The fourth are the Sufis. We can judge the ability of the people by the choice which they have made of travelling. The first group are interested in what they think are techniques, the second in exciting thoughts and reports, the third in one thing after another, and the fourth recognize the true Sufic reality. The fires of today. It is related that Bahuddin Naqshband said, I was invited to speak at an assembly of the educated and the ignorant. There arrived a very large collection of people, attentive and interested, but as I looked and felt, I did not at that time see a single human being. I said to the people whom I had taken with me, in order to demonstrate the limitations of action upon the unsuitable, a well is not filled by means of dew, and a leaf will not be found after being deluged with the contents of a well. I started by saying, Sufis are a disgrace. They have secret teachings which they keep from the ordinary people. The eminence which many Sufis attain is due to the exercise of forbidden powers. Now tell me, do you want to be a Sufi? Almost all of those present shook their heads. Then I continued. Such were the words spoken by the ignorant, foolish, and block-headed governor of Kufa, of whom you all know much. As you are aware, he was a bigot, a murderer, and an enemy of humanity. It is small wonder that he felt the need to represent the Sufis in this manner. Now all of us here know that Sufis are the elect of humankind. Who among you dares to call himself a Sufi? At these words everyone rose. Thus does pomposity, ab-o-tab, stem from vanity, guru, which is a manifestation of the commanding self, nafs-i amara, The fires of today are the ashes of tomorrow. The law of reverse effect. A man once visited al-Shah, Bahuddin Naqshband, saying that he wanted directions on how to behave, on how to live his life, on what to do and what not to do. The master called some of his disciples to dinner and asked the man to put his questions again. When this had been done, Sheikh Bahuddin said, "You should try to live an easy life, supporting yourself by stealing and bringing part of the money to me. You should neglect prayer and tidiness of appearance, and should always try to get the upper hand over other people. In short, lack of principles and cunning should see you through." As the master spoke, the applicant was becoming more and more uneasy. As soon as he had finished, he ran from the room. Some weeks later, Bahuddin asked whether there was any news of his would-be disciple. Yes, they told him, he is living an exemplary life in Samarkand. He also tells everyone that you are Satan and try to wean him from the right path. Bahuddin laughed. If I had told him to live a good life, he said, he would not have obeyed, because all the injunctions so to do have been dinned into him from babyhood. In reality, he hankered for something more strange, and when I assailed his inward self with an account of a strange way of life, he realized that he would feel better as a compliant and virtuous man. But, asked his disciple, what of his blackening your name as an adviser in sin? Those who believe evil partake in evil, said the master, and I am sure that the scholars of Samarkand are not such people. Treasure. It is related of the most ancient Sufis, and repeated by many who followed them, throughout the schools which have formed and dissolved and formed again, that the anecdote of the treasure works within the mind to bring understanding of deep things to those who believe only that shallow feelings are deep, and that low things are high, and that what is on the surface is what is on the inside. The treasure. Several men went to a teaching master and clamoured for his attention, each vying with the other to ask his question, or to make his statement, or to get his answer. When the master had produced order in this multitude, the first man said, "I have been seeking for many years, and I have found nothing." The second man said, "I have found delight in the seeking. Is this then its purpose?" The third man said, "Sometimes I think that I have found, and then I feel that I have not, and that I must continue." The fourth man said, "Sometimes I doubt myself, sometimes the teachers, sometimes the truth itself." The master answered, "There may be 100 questions, but there is only one answer, and I shall now give it and inform you all. This is it. There were a number of men who were attracted to the design of digging for a treasure. They took all sorts of implements and went to the place where it was buried, and they started to work. Some tired easily, which made them feel that the task might not be worthwhile. Some found small fragments of clay pots, and from time to time thought that this must be the treasure itself. Some enjoyed for the first time the pleasures of hard work, which they imagined to be the delights of seeking or of finding. Some again looked at the mud and the stones, and were distressed by their abundance, for they were people easily dispirited. And there were many other men and women too, who felt many things, for they had put a time or a shape upon the work, and when the time was past, or the shape, as they thought, found, they became a prey to delusion and agitation. Those who persisted found the container which held the precious hoard. Those who were the victims of confusion and debate did not. The confused ones pass the rest of their days in seeking information and explanations, but the dedicated bore off the treasure. So those who were agitated and deluded stumbled from one sage to another, asking how they might know the treasure, how they might seek it, how they might find it. The sages, one and all, told them that they could not do any of these things unless they were as those who had succeeded. But the people clamoured for success, not for guidance, as they were already convinced that they possessed, from the start, the mind, the body, and the spirit, which would enable them to bring their design to fruitful conclusion. Permission to expound. Because of the special nature of Sufi writings, teachers of the way have often issued permissions to expound and to explain their books to worthy individuals. Not everyone, of course, has abided by this requirement, and many have been the supposed Sufis who have made a career for themselves by purporting to be able to teach through the books of Sufi masters. It is related that a dervish was holding forth on one of the illustrious poet Jami's works one day, when a newcomer slipped into the lecture hall and started to shake his head more and more often, as the learned one gave his interpretations of the meaning of Jami. Everyone was looking at the stranger, and finally the dervish fixed him with a penetrating eye and cried, "Do you presume to disagree with me?" "Yes," said the other man. "And," asked the dervish, "have you permission from the great master Jami to interpret his works?" "No." "Then who are you, and by what right do you behave in this ridiculous manner, challenging a man of my importance?" "My name is Jami," said the visitor, and slipped away. This podcast is copyright 2018, the Idries Shah Foundation.